Unlike the way our world now, where food can be bought in stores, groceries can pile up in houses, fruits can be purchased on streets, and restaurants can be found almost everywhere. The early way of getting food was not easy for mankind. You may even say that it was at the risk of death. Surviving was at the forefront of their minds as they are exposed to the harsh nature and predators that loom around. Most importantly, death through starvation is a constant. Our ancestors took surviving like an art, as they developed tools to hunt food and later on learned how to grow their own. They learned how to maximize the use of what they can find, and at some point, starving every day was no longer a constant worry, and that gave way to the most important resource of all time. Agriculture spread at different rates, depending on climate and geography. As agriculture evolved in these locations, so did the social, economic, and cultural practices that led to what is known as civilization. Even before the invention of agriculture, hunter-gatherers in the Fertile Crescent in China had already been making tools from stone, wood, bone, and woven grass. Once farming took hold, people began improving their tools to help them plant, harvest, and store crops. One of the earliest found tools from the agricultural period was the pointed digging stick, used to scratch furrows into the soil. Eventually, handles were attached to the stick to create a simple plow, known as art. Soon after, iron metallurgy was invented in the Fertile Crescent, and iron tips and blades were added to the farming tools. Meanwhile, in the Egypt and Babylonia, farmers developed a funnel attached to the end of the plow to ease dropping of seeds and wooden-handled sickles with stone or iron blades to harvest grains. Permanent homes and stockpiles of wild cereals gave them enough time and energy to experiment with cultivating seeds and breeding animals without the risk of starvation. In the Fertile Crescent, the first farmers cultivated emmer wheat and barley as the first crops. In China, they grew millet, rice, and soybeans, and sorghum in Africa. Ancestors in Central America cultivated squash, beans, tomatoes, avocados, corn, chili peppers, and domesticated wild turkeys, alpacas, and llamas. Meanwhile, in Pacific coast of Panama, archaeological excavations discovered the traces of manioc, yams, arrowroots, and corn on ancient grinding stones. With the growing surplus of harvests, people had learned how to store food efficiently, these leading to the creation of containers. Before the rise of the agricultural period, nomads kept their food in portable leather or straw baskets or in underground storage pits. When people began to live in permanent settlements, they built heavier but more functional storage containers from day that they dried in the sun. They also lined underground ovens with clay. In doing so, the ovens baked the ground wheat batter and hardened the clay into pottery. These discovery with high-temperature underground ovens later led to the invention of bronze and iron metallurgy. Another practice brought about by agriculture was the domestication of animals. The first domesticated animal was the dog. In several parts of the world, dogs were used for both hunting and food. It was one of the 5 domesticated animals in Fertile Crescent that had the greatest impact on food productivity, as well as sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, and horses. These animals gave earlier ancestors sustenance as well as help in the field, pulling plows and wagons, grinding grains, and developing irrigation systems. These resulted in more food production, larger populations, and early stages of land transportation. And of course, the most important invention during this period was the irrigation system. It was in Mesopotamia, where the early ancestors, situated along the banks of Tigris and Euphrates, developed three methods of water regulation. Through the development of irrigation systems, areas which were no longer naturally productive were made fertile once more. This also created a stratified society of laborers, supervisors, and administrators necessary for planning, building, and maintaining these waterways. As food was grown and stored more efficiently, populations increased and settlements grew larger, creating both the incentive and the means to produce even more food on more land. Along with the increase in food production and population came social and economic transformations. From early man as nomadic people, moving place to place, chasing after resources, the introduction of agriculture allowed our ancestors to finally settle down in groups and learn how to maximize the resources. Hunting for food was no longer a priority thanks to the surplus of harvests. People learned how to specialize in occupations such as pottery, baking, metallurgy, engineering, writing systems, and agriculture. Aside from pottery and clay ovens discussed earlier, in the Fertile Crescent, people devised a counting system based on clay tokens to keep track of harvests and animals. The first writing system, Sumerian cuneiform, scratched on flat clay tablets, was developed as an early accounting and governance tool. As societies learned to produce, store, and distribute food, they developed the characteristics of modern civilizations: densely populated cities, centralized government, organized religion, private property, specialized occupations, public works, taxation, technology, and science. To facilitate the organization and administration of these large, dense communities, people began to create social infrastructures, economic, political, and religious institutions that created new social hierarchies. These hierarchies were populated with people playing specialized roles such as professional administrators, farmers, artisans, traders, merchants, and spiritual leaders. Additionally, due to increased trade and conflict with external civilizations, cities required diplomats, armies, and centralized rulers. With the development of specialized workforce, these drove the first written laws and led to the development of complex societies. From this point of view, agriculture drives civilization, including religious practices, social attitudes, and legal codes. In order to facilitate cooperation between these many different classes and to organize large numbers of people to work together for the large-scale construction of irrigation systems, monuments, and other projects, leaders were required, comprising a new social class. From being constantly threatened by the possibility of death in the wilds during the early ages, our ancestors found ways to use what they have and thrive. From the constant perseverance of wanting to survive longer, they found ways to preserve food and gain more time. From there, they started to experiment and discoveries were made. Agriculture started and flourished from the trial and errors made throughout history until we can finally see the fruits of a long labor in today's society. What we see today was from the seeds sown yesterday. The story of agriculture does not end here and will still continue on to the future.